and welcome to the College Football Fanatics podcast. I am here. Hello and welcome back to the College Football Fanatics podcast. I am here. I'm your host Daniel. This is episode 11, I think. I'd have to go back and look, but I think it's 11. So this week is another short episode. It's going to be all about contenders for next year's national championship and the pretenders as well. So we're going to be talking about the teams who I think are going to make it into the 5 teams who are going to make it, who have the possibility at least of making it into the championship talks by the end of the year, and the 5 teams who I think might do very well, but will ultimately not be in the real talks. And the ones who are like, if half a dozen things go right, then they'll get in, but they might not they won't if, one of those half a dozen things doesn't go their way. So uh, let's just hop right into it. I'm just going to plug myself in once again, like I do at the beginning of most of these shows. So Instagram is the CF underscore fanatics underscore football. Or it's CF underscore fanatics underscore podcast, I believe is what it is. It's something along the lines of that. Actually, I can pull it up and check. But it is, we have so it's CF underscore fanatics underscore official. Sorry. It's underscore official. So that is the Instagram for this podcast, and the YouTube channel for this podcast is also College Football Fanatics podcast, or it's just College Football Fanatics. Just search that up. We're the first YouTube channel that pretty much comes up everywhere. So that'll be pretty much it. So without further ado, let's hop right into who I think is going to be in and out of next year's playoff. So the first team I want to talk about is Georgia. They've been the national champions 2 years running. They absolutely demolished TCU this past game, and before that, they beat Alabama pretty well. So I think again they're on their way for a possible three-peat. But there's other teams who I think are also coming up who I think are going to be in that talks. But Georgia is definitely a strong contender. One of the pretenders from the same conference, I think Alabama is going to be a pretender. And I know this is going to generate some controversy over, Alabama versus Georgia, but Alabama has failed against Georgia for 2 years in a row. Or they failed to become the SEC championship 2 years in a row to Georgia, and Alabama has lost a couple of games last year, which I think ties their record for most losses under Nick Saban. So it's 2 losses. I get it; it's not that big of a deal, but when you're that dominant over that spread of games, or that spread of a dynasty, it's a bit of a big deal. So next up, Michigan. Michigan, I think, is going to make it for a 3rd year in a row. Michigan's strength is not in their recruiting. They're currently ranked, I think, 18th overall in their recruiting. So we have seen that Michigan's strength is not in their recruiting, but in their development of their players, and also in their in their ability to pad the places where they need it with the transfer portal. For example, the tight end position, you have Luke Schoonmaker and Eric All both leaving. Schoonmaker is leaving for the NFL, and Eric All is leaving for Iowa. So Michigan recognized that Colson Loveland cannot do everything alone. So they brought in AJ Barner to help out from Indiana. Um, Michigan also realizes that Cade McNamara is leaving, leaving a bit of a gap between JJ McCarthy and Davis Warren. And so you see Jack Tuttle going into Michigan from Indiana. You see offensive linemen flocking to Michigan from places like Stanford, places like where else? So Stanford is a big one. I think UCLA might have given a player to Michigan. I'm not 100% sure about that, but again, offensive line. They were going to lose a few players since some of those players have come back, so there will be battles for the offensive line. I think Michigan again is going to three-peat. They're going to be the first team. They're the first team to win the Joe Moore Award 2 years in a row. I think they're going to be the first team to win it 3 years in a row. Michigan has a phenomenal offensive line, a phenomenal offensive line coach, and I really see them doing really well in once again. They're bringing back most of their pieces, so I don't see a big downturn in their production. And I think that Michigan is going to have a really good wide receiver room, possibly one of the best in the country. Darius Clemens and Tyler Morris, and there's a third, Amarian Walker. That's it. Darius Clemens and Amarian Walker are very tall receivers. I think Darius Clemens is like 6'4". I think Amarian Walker is like 6'1" or 6'3", something like that. And I know there's a difference between like 6'1" and 6'3", but it's going to be, it's one of those. I can't remember for certain, but they're both very tall players. And they're able to move their body around very well. Darius Clemens has shown, in things like spring games and stuff like that, very strong capabilities in getting past defensive backs. So it'll be really interesting to see how he fits up against the teams that Michigan plays next year. So the next pretender that I want to talk about is Clemson. And this one I don't think is going to generate nearly as much controversy as Alabama. This might be the second to least controversial pick, but Clemson with DJ Uiagalelei, they just weren't great. They weren't anywhere near what was expected of them, and out of their head coach. They just really weren't. And it's I didn't think DJ Uiagalelei was that great of a quarterback. You know, he could move around pretty well, but I had a lot of concerns with his decisions under pressure. I had a lot of concerns just overall with his ability to lead that Clemson team. And I was proven right because he has since transferred out of Clemson. I'm not sure where he's going, but it is very clear that it's very obvious that he wasn't doing well, so he left. The next contender team that I'd like to talk about is Ohio State, another Big Ten team, and I have the Big Ten represented by two teams in here over the SEC, which is represented by only one team in here, because I think Ohio State is going to do very well. They are losing CJ Stroud, who is a very capable quarterback. He's probably he's, in my opinion, at least the second best quarterback in this year's upcoming draft. And they're also losing Jackson Smith and Jigba and Marvin Harrison Jr., as well as a few other pieces of their defense and offense. But losing pieces at Ohio State doesn't worry me as much as losing pieces at like Wisconsin or Purdue or even to some extent at Michigan, because Michigan, they're decent recruiters, but their strength their strength is more in the development. Ohio State is always bringing in great players. They're always bringing in 5 stars. They're always in the top 10, usually in the top 5. So it doesn't worry me that they're losing good wide receivers, cuz they'll, as long as they keep winning 10, 11 games a season, they're going to continue to bring in those players that are going to always, fill those spots. So they have players that can fill the shoes of Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jackson Smith and Jigba. So it's very clear that they're going to be okay. Um, the next pretender is Miami. Miami has a great recruiting cycle. I think they're like 15th. And people are like, "Oh, 15th isn't a great recruiting cycle." If you're in the top 20 of a league that is 130 some odd teams, 136-ish teams, that's a great recruiting cycle. That is a great recruiting cycle, because there are not many teams that can bring in consistently top 20, top 10 classes. And Miami has been doing that for the past 4 or 5 years. And they will continue to do so. But Miami was disappointing last season, in my opinion. I think actually, in most of your opinions, they were 5-7. They didn't even make a bowl game. I remember hearing preseason talks that, oh, Miami is going to be, number one in the ACC. They're going to beat out Clemson, and they fell dramatically in those expectations. They just weren't. But it is the first year of a new head coach. So I tend to kind of give more forgiveness for that. But with the way transfer portal and recruiting cycles are going in NIL, there's going to be less forgiveness for that. Teams can be turned around in a single season, and no team embodies that more than our next contender, which is USC. USC went from a 2-10 season to an 11-3 season, I believe. And they really turned it around. They have a Heisman quarterback winner in Caleb Williams, who is coming back to USC. We'll see if he can possibly win that back to back. But USC has been consistently filling the spots where they are losing players to the draft or to graduation, and they are also upgrading their defense. But the problem that I'm seeing with them is, yes, they're upgrading their defense, but they're still super focused on offense this recruiting cycle, which kind of confused me, because your offense was winning you games, your defense was losing you games. So it's like it just made little sense to me. And I understand you need to reload every year on offense, but as a school like USC, they were getting beat out for a lot of the top players in California by teams that are not in California, like Oregon. Oregon beat them out of a couple of very good players. I think Utah beat them out of a team out of a couple of very good players as well. But not only that, but you're also losing to teams that are in California. UCLA is beating you out occasionally. So it really, begs the question of, why are you so focused on offensive talent when you have these giant, oceans of offensive talent already on your roster, but your defense is still lacking? And so I think that's something that I think Lincoln Riley is going to have to address, is how do you get more defensive talent on your roster while still retaining that offensive talent? And I'm gonna be interested to see what he does in the next few years. They did use the transfer portal very well in upgrading their defense, so they got a few key pieces that I think are really gonna slide in well there. Now, this next team, I consider them a pretender because a lot of people are having overambitious ideas of what a successful season for this team would be like. And once you hear the name, I think you're going to understand what I'm talking about. But I do want to talk about them a little bit before I say their name. This team, they have a new head coach who's been bringing in talent like nobody else. They have possibly one of the best cornerback duos in the league. Um, and they are really they have a very bright future. But I don't think they're going to be fighting for a national championship next season. Okay. Now that I've said that, the team is Colorado with Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders is bringing in talent like I've almost never seen before in his first year as a Division One head coach. Um, even Nick Saban didn't bring in the talent that Deion Sanders is, and it's really exciting to me at least to see this. So I think they're going to probably have something like an 8-4 season or a 9-3 season. I don't think they're going to have an undefeated season. Uh, Texas is another contender. I think that Quinn Ewers is very good. They're bringing Archie Manning. They've got great pieces. Xavier Worthy, another very good receiver. I think he's going into his sophomore year now, so it's going to be really interesting to see how they use him. He's very fast. He's really able to control his body incredibly well. Last pretender, Texas A&M. They did not have a good season this past year. I don't think they're going to have another good season, although they're still recruiting well. I know they're getting pieces out, taking people in, but I still don't think they're going to have a good season. But that is all that I have for you guys today. I have a lot of homework to do, so school always come first over this for me. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this. Leave comments in the comment section below about whether you agree, whether you disagree, who you think the contenders and pretenders are going to be, and let me know what you guys think, and leave a like on this video. I hope you guys have a great day. Enjoy yourselves, and whenever you're watching this, I hope you are enjoying the content. See you guys.